President Barry Jagdeo says there is need for greater commitment on the part of developed countries to tackle the financial and food crises plaguing the world on this occasion of World Food Day.
Suriname has released the Guyanese vessel and crew after the owner of the boat paid the fine imposed on him today.
And in excess of $600 million will be released to execute urgent repairs to the Demerara Harbor Bridge.
The details of these and other stories, Junior News, and of course the latest sporting action in the Diamond Mineral Water and NCN Sport News, and more after these. Good evening, I'm Delicia Fletcher.
And I'm Paul Moore.
With this edition of the 6 o'clock news for today, Thursday, October 16, 2008. Here's what's happening, Paul.
Thanks, Delicia. President Barry Jagdeo says there is need for greater commitment on the part of developed countries to tackle the financial and food crises plaguing the world. He made this remark during the official commissioning of the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization's office on Brick Dam. The Guyanese leader says global leaders also need to adopt strategies and redirect resources in this regard. He says failure to adapt to the current changes can have a devastating impact on the world's agricultural sector. As such, the president has called on leaders to think outside of the box and act swiftly. President Barry Jagdeo has announced that in excess of $600 million will be released to execute repairs to the Demerara Harbor Bridge. This follows his initial expression of shock at the disrepair of the facility during a recent interview with NCN. More in this Akila Jacobs report.
But we've already looked at sourcing material. It's going to cost us in excess of $600 million, and that is not the end of it. That's not all that is required to do the complete job, but at least $600 million will have to be spent in the near term.
An assessment was done on the bridge on Friday last, and it was found that there was a problem with the traditional method of attaching the decking plates.
I had a detailed discussion with the Chief Planning Officer and with the General Manager of the bridge and the Minister. There were some issues about the method of attaching, the traditional method of attaching the decking material to the I-beams at the bottom.
It was explained that if the attachment continues to be done in the traditional way, then there would be a constant breakage at the bridge. Meanwhile, Demerara Harbor Bridge manager Ralston Adams told NCN that the money will be used primarily to deal with the decking problem. He disclosed that $32 million has already been injected to repair the anchor chains. A shipment of additional anchor chains is expected in the next 2 weeks. However, Mr. Adams mentioned that a development program will be worked out in detail to commence works under the $600 million allocated. The bridge rakes in a total revenue of $23.4 million per month. Reporting for the NCN 6 o'clock news, Akila Jacobs.
The Ministry of Human Services and Social Security is reminding persons to report all cases of crime and domestic violence. Domestic Violence Policy Unit Head Gitanjali Gear says when persons visit the ministry, a social worker would address their concerns. The Domestic Policy Unit has started its awareness campaign to inform society of the importance of curbing domestic violence. Domestic Violence Act that was passed in 1996 gives legal protection to persons suffering from domestic violence. Representatives from over 15 organizations today discussed ways to better coordinate and integrate efforts to work more synergistically to benefit hinterland communities. The PEPFAR Hinterland Initiative is part of a partnership with the Embassy Center for Disease Control and the Ministry of Health. Natasha Smith has more.
CDC's Chief of Party Dr. Lamar Hasbrook says the discussion is intended to develop a multi-sectoral approach to the delivery of service to the hinterland.
We want to develop an approach with a focus towards delivering services into the hinterlands. We want to promote integration versus independence. Too many of us are out there going into the region and leaving the region in an independent way, and one of us comes behind on the heels of the other, and we could have combined forces and gotten much more out of that visit and out of that interaction. So we want to promote integration versus independence. We want to promote cooperation versus competition.
Dr. Shanti Singh of the National AIDS Program Secretariat, in her brief remarks, also highlighted some of the successes and challenges faced in the interior as it relates to equitable distribution of services.
You show up in the hinterland region, and even though you believe that there's some amount of coordination going on in the hinterland region, you show up and you see people doing exactly what you're supposed to be in there doing. And so it raises the question again, how do we best coordinate this? How do we not duplicate our efforts? How do we not step on each other's toe? Are we doing the right thing? Are we doing it in the right place?
Meanwhile, Minister of Health Dr. Leslie Ramsamy, in his address, said it is unreasonable and unacceptable that persons living in the hinterland should have to travel to the city to seek medical attention, and therefore it is important to bring healthcare to the people. Dr. Ramsamy says that there are 400 healthcare facilities in the hinterland, and the success they have are because of the local healthcare professionals from the same communities. He says community ownership of projects also needs to be addressed. He says the challenges faced are well known and exist in transportation, human resources, and coordination factors. He says coordination is important since health of the people should be of utmost importance.
When it comes to the health of our people, there is no place for competition that puts us in compartments. Competition is good, as long as we're working towards the same goal together. What matters is tomorrow morning a child should not have to be born with HIV. What matters is that people have bed nets so that malaria would not affect them. What matters is that a pregnant woman could get care.
The U.S. Ambassador to Guyana, Mr. John Jones, says the project is very important to both the United States and Guyana and will bring benefit to the interior. He says the United States resources will be used to ensure the project's success.
Anytime we undertake one of these initiatives, it means working together in partnership with the organizations that are already there. Building the infrastructure, helping to bring those new partners into the fold, so to speak, not to build a new mousetrap, not to repeat what has been done.
The discussions today focused on putting plans in place to launch the PEPFAR's Hinterland Initiative, which is expected to begin in the next 12 months at the cost of over $100,000. Organizations involved include NAPS, WWF, VSO, CEDA, and the Amerindian Affairs Ministry, among others. Reporting for the 6 o'clock news, Natasha Smith.
Suriname has released the Guyanese vessel and the crew after the owner of the boat paid the fine imposed on him today. But local authorities say there will be no letting up on the matter since it was an illegal act on the part of Surinamese authorities. Here are details.
Prasad has confirmed that the Guyanese vessel MV Chandra 1 and the crew members were released by the Suriname Navy this morning after the owner of the vessel paid the imposed fine. Minister Prasad says he was informed by way of an email that the crew will be leaving that country on Friday at 5 hours. The minister says the delay is due to the tide and a mechanical problem with the vessel's engine. But despite this, Guyanese authorities say they will still proceed with the matter. A senior official at the Foreign Affairs Ministry says while the men and the vessel were released, the Suriname authorities continue to impose on Guyana's territory. Only yesterday, President Barry Jagdeo at a press conference lashed out at the Surinamis for imposing a fine on the owner of MV Chandra.
I think the Surinamis are indicating that they will have to pay a fine. But this is not good enough for my government because this river has the characteristic of a border river, and even sovereignty aside, and I still think the question of sovereignty over the river has not been settled, but sovereignty aside, the parties should have full user access to the river.
The president had also highlighted that the border, which was identified by the UN Tribunal on the Law of the Sea last September 17, should be enjoyed by both countries. The MV Lady Chandra 1 was seized by Suriname's military at 13 hours 30 Tuesday last while traveling in the Corentyne River. It was reportedly boarded by the Surinames and escorted by 3 military vessels to the Suriname's port of Naikeri. A release from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs says this provocation is the latest in the series that has seen recurrent interventions by the Surinames against Guyanese shipping in the Corentyne River. This has been brought to the attention of the Secretary General of